Good evening, everybody. 8:15 here in frigid Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Your marvelous host, James Krasnarek, is here to break down the top 10 defenses in NFL history. So far, I've made it through 3 defenses, and from here on out, offenses are just going to have bigger headaches trying to figure out the next 7 units on the list. And coming in at number 7 is one that you could make a case might be the greatest defense in league history. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens, the Purple Storm. There are several statistics that show this defense was an all-time great defense. 4 shutouts, very impressive. Did not allow a single 100-yard rusher. Allowed 23 points in 4 playoff games. 10.3 points per game, which in the 16-game season era is an NFL record. Allowed 247.9 yards per game, second in the league. 60.6 rushing yards per game. They gave up less than 1,000 yards rushing as a team, which is incredible. They scored 5 touchdowns on defense and forced 49 turnovers. But the statistic in my mind is one that you wouldn't think is impressive, and that's 2-3. And that's the record over a 5-game span in which this defense did not have an offense around them. Literally, the defense had no offensive help. In that 5-game span, you know how many offensive touchdowns the Ravens scored? 0. 0 offensive touchdowns they scored in that 5-game span. And they won 2 games. How do you win 2 games out of 5 with an offense that doesn't score a touchdown? It's just tremendously scary how good that defense played. And you got Pro Bowlers at every phase of the defense. You got middle linebacker Ray Lewis, the AP Defensive Player of the Year, and in my opinion, for the 2000 season, should have been the league MVP. I know Marshall Faulk in St. Louis breaking the record for touchdowns was impressive, but Ray Lewis that year, if you got past the line of scrimmage against the Ravens, you were getting hit by Ray Lewis. He had defensive tackle Sam Adams, who was a gigantic human being. He was just such a plug in the middle for that defensive line. And you had safety Rod Woodson, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest defensive backs to play the game, because he could play a corner, safety, both safety positions. Several interceptions that year. Key to Ravens secondary that was just very opportunistic. And at Super Bowl 35, that was never more evident. As against the New York Giants, they absolutely crushed their opponent 34-7. The only score the Giants had in that game was a kickoff return for a touchdown. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens, you would look at those numbers and you'd think, damn, that might be the greatest defense ever. However, there is a slight problem with that. And it's professional history. And that the 2000 Ravens that year were back in the old AFC Central. And they had to play against teams, the Browns, the Steelers, the Jaguars, the Bengals. And I'm going to give you a list of the starting quarterbacks for those teams. And it's going to prove my argument. Here's a list of quarterbacks that team went against during the 2000 season. Kent Graham, Jay Fiedler, Scott Mitchell and Achilles Smith, Tim Couch, Cordell Stewart, Achilles Smith again, an aging Troy Aikman, Doug Peterson, Spurgeon Wynn, Ryan Leaf, Jake Plummer, and Vinny Testaverde. Now, do they deserve to be the top 10 defenses? Yes. Number 7 is good because if they would have played against, if they'd have played a couple of games against somebody like a Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady here and there, and would have done that, then that's different. But when you play that many inept quarterbacks who never really were legitimate starters in NFL history, and I think combined they have more interceptions and touchdowns. That's going to make your defense look good. The 2000 Ravens, still an absolutely ferocious unit. I mean, the defensive line was huge. The linebackers, Jamie Sharper, Peter Bulware, Ray Lewis. In the secondary, the other guys like Chris McAllister, they took no prisoners. Definitely one of the greatest defenses of all time. Moving right on down the list. After this, we will reach the halfway point in our show. Number 6, the no-name defense. The 71-73 Miami Dolphins. The no-name defense gets overlooked in league history. Wrongfully so. No names with big games. The motto of that team was big team, little me. They didn't care about individuals. They wanted to win games as a team. And they went to 3 straight Super Bowls and won 2. For the 3 seasons span 71-73, this unit gave up just under 12 points a game, allowed 323 points from 1972-73, 11.5 per game, and they set an NFL record in 1973, allowing 92 passing yards a game. During the 1972 undefeated season, which they won the Super Bowl after finishing 17-0, counting playoffs, they made 9 mental mistakes all year. Wow. They could tackle incredibly well. Very, 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 very solid tackling defense. They could hit you. They could intercept. They could do it all. It is kind of a shame that linebacker Nick Buoniconti is the only one in the Hall of Fame. But if you look at the other guys who played around him, they were definitely all good enough to make the Hall of Fame. You had Pro Bowl safety Jake Scott, who was Super Bowl VII MVP with 2 picks. Defensive end Bill Stanfield, a multi-year Pro Bowler and a very, very underrated player. You had safety Dick Anderson, the AP Defensive Player of the Year in 1973. And of course you had Nick Buoniconti. He actually said, Nick Buoniconti, when he was inducted into Canton, Ohio for the Hall of Fame, that when you look at my bust, you're not looking at the bust of Nick Buoniconti, but you're looking at the bust of the no-name defense. And I think that sums it up very well. 3 straight Super Bowls they appeared in. They got beat 24-3 by Dallas. Crushed Washington 14-7. The only score Washington had in the game was of course the Gary Yepremian blunder. And Super Bowl VIII pounded the Vikings 24-7. What makes this defense, I think, better than the Ravens or the Buccaneers, even though they played in a different era, they had plenty of great teams to go against. The Steelers, the Raiders, the Vikings, so many great teams. And they shut them down consistently. Very, very underrated unit. Just absolutely sad that this defense gets lost in the annals of NFL history. When the NFL Network did their top 10 list, they didn't even have this team in the top 10. Absolutely should be in the top 10 and top 6 to me. Speaking of the number 6, we're halfway through our list, so let's look back on where we've come from. Number 10 on my list of the top 10 defenses, the Cowboys of the 70s. Number 9, the Madison Avenue Giants, 56-63. Number 8, the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 7, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Number 6, the no-name defense. Before I'd like to go on, I would just like to make another comment about the 2000 Ravens. If you look at what some other great defenses have done since then, such as, the 04 Patriots, the 08 Steelers, you've got other great defenses like, the 49ers the last few years. Imagine what they would have done with the pass rush and, the turnover, the absolute fierce hitting of their defenses against the quarterbacks that the Ravens went against. That would have been interesting to see. We're moving on to number 5. We've just gone through 2 Super Bowl champion defenses. And of the 5 teams on this list I've mentioned, all 5 won at least 1 championship. This team right here never even sniffed it. The Grit Splits Falcons of 1977. The greatest single-season point defense in league history. They had a play in their playbook was called Sticky Sam. It was a defensive play that called for no fewer than 9 pass rushers. That kind of defense would never work post-1977, the dead ball era. 1978 on, offenses would have torn that to shreds. They allowed 129 points, 9.2 per game, NFL record. 98.9 passing yards per game, and 14 touchdowns total. But I think the most impressive statistic, and the reason why I put them above the Ravens, the Bucks, the Cowboys, and even the Dolphins and Giants, is because they went 7-7 with an offense that averaged fewer than 13 points a game. When you win 7 games and your offense averages fewer than 13 points per game, that's really damn impressive. That just shows you're just a hell of a defense. It's kind of surprising though that only one of the players in that defense made the Pro Bowl, and that was the leader in the NFC in picks, Roland Lawrence, who had 7. So you look at all the other great players in that defense, you really can't think of any off the top of your head. Roland Lawrence is the only one that I can remember. They were an anonymous group, but with that one radical scheme in that last year in the dead ball era, the Great Spliff Falcons took full advantage of it. All right, coming up next on my list, 4 of the greatest teams in league history, with defenses so fierce that if you were an offense going up against the stifling units, you would have to change your shorts. Coming up now.